Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting of the Frederick County School Board of Frederick County Finance Committee meeting to order. The date is Monday, May 19th, and the time is 4:34 p.m. And it sounds like we have a request to participate remotely.
As Madam Chair, Miles Atkins has requested to participate in the meeting remotely for a personal matter, specifically due to a work commitment in Dulles, Virginia. I move that we allow Mr. Atkins to participate in this meeting remotely.
Second. All right, we have a motion. It's been seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Welcome, Mr. Atkins.
Thank you.
And we have an agenda before us. How would the committee like to proceed?
Madam Chair, I move that we adopt the agenda before us.
Second.
All right, we have a motion. It's been seconded. Discussion. Hearing no discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. We have an agenda. It looks like the first thing on the new business is federal funds information from your team. Dr. Hummer.
All right, Madam Chair, thank you so much. We have 5 items for you this evening. Of those 5 items, 2 of those we are recommending to go to the full board for approval. Those 2 items are, we did thankfully receive those additional dollars from the state. Thank you to Governor Youngkin and the General Assembly. So we do have a proposal before you of how to utilize those dollars. Now, as a reminder, we do not have to go back downtown to reappropriate because they already appropriated the full amount to that. So we're very thankful for that as well. We also have another position that we are going to ask to add on to the data sciences program down at Dowell J. That is going to be funded through the grant and not local dollars for that. So those are the 2 items for us to send to the full board for approval that we're asking. We also have 3 items that for information only. We're going to be reviewing some federal funds information. We're getting a lot of questions about that in regards to where those dollars are spent, what that's going to look like for the future in regards to all the noise we're hearing at the federal level, so we wanted to provide that information to you all. We also had a spring internal audit conducted, so we'll review those results with you. And then we also want to just give you a brief overview of the position allocation of how we're being good stewards of our dollar, good stewards of our positions, which led us to the additional positions that we had requested. So with that, Madam Chair, I'll now hand it over to Mrs. Anderson. Thank you.
All right, so we'll dive on into federal funds information. And as Dr. Humber said, we thought that this was a great time considering the Federal Department of Education has been in the news. So we wanted to give you that 30,000-foot view of what federal funds we receive and how we use them. So you know that our school division oversees 12 financial funds that are essentially their own little business entities. 3 of those funds receive federal dollars, and those are the funds that you see on your screen. The school operating fund, you know, that covers our day-to-day business of educating and transporting students. 3% of our revenue source comes from the federal government, and that is through titled grants, as well as monies that we receive through the Individual with Disabilities Education Act. 3%. And then school nutrition, 45% of those funds are received from the federal government through the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And then the school debt service fund, 1%, we receive federal dollars towards one of our bond issues that we'll talk about in just a minute. So in total, $13.8 million combined in federal funds. How we use those funds, starting off with the first block to your left, 3% in the operating fund equates to $7.9 million. That is to help supplement instruction for students who are most in need. So that includes additional resources for our students who are economically disadvantaged, as well as students requiring special unique needs. It also helps address professional learning for educators. So with that 3%, we employ about 44 positions, and that's made up in special education teachers, reading and math teachers, and instructional assistants. That money also helps towards providing half of a parent liaison position to help reduce language barriers to the academics or to learning for our students, as well as instructional supplies and materials, and of course educator professional learning. And again, these federal dollars are meant to supplement, not supplant, the educational programs that we provide to our students funded by the locality and the state. So the school nutrition program, about $5.6 million we're expecting from the federal government, and that goes towards the costs of that program, including our school nutrition staff, food, and equipment and supplies. And then the 1%, or almost $300,000, is essentially free money that we borrowed to construct the new transportation facility out on Route 522 South back a few years ago. So like all of our other bond issues, there's a 20-year payback schedule, and essentially we pay no interest on that bond because the federal government pays the interest for us, essentially. So I'll pause there for a minute to see if you have any questions.
Not quite. So
Right.
the 3%, that's from, so the 3% is from the Department of Education, Department of Education, and then the other 45% is from USDA.
That's correct.
And then the construction financing, that's from
That is
DOE. Department.
no, that is passed through directly from the federal government through
okay.
the
Got
school
it.
qualified construction bond program.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Excellent question. Ready to move on?
Yep.
All right, perfect. So next, that takes us to the spring internal audit, and I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Seibert.
Brown Edwards was, switch the slide. Brown Edwards, the certified public accountants, were on site in March 2025 to audit our books based on procedures for a measurement period of September 1st, 2024 to February 28th, 2025. They are engaged by the county to come and go through our information. They look for appropriate authorizations, our supporting documentation, transaction appropriateness, and our calculation accuracy in accounts payable, payroll, accounts receivable, cash receipts, and computer inventory. There were no findings for our accounts payable, payroll, accounts receivable, and cash. We did have a finding of computer in our computer inventory. We had 1,500 devices that were purchased in October, and 45 were still in the process of being tagged. When we have a finding, we do have to come up with a corrective action that we give to the auditor. So our corrective action is that once our equipment is received, our devices are going to be moved into inventory by that technician when they verify the counts matching the purchase order and the packing list. And then it'll get moved over to accounts payable to be paid, and it'll be tagged with a barcode and then put into the Frederick County inventory database.
So essentially, Ms. Seibert, these 45 devices were being held in storage, getting ready to be distributed, and at the point of distribution is when they have their barcode, when they're inputted into the system.
Correct.
And the auditors said, no, you got to change that. You need to make it
Correct.
as soon as you receive those.
Yes.
So that's what we're changing it to. As soon as we
Exactly.
receive those, even if they sit in storage, they're going to be tagged and recorded.
They'll be put in our inventory.
Okay.
Exactly.
Excellent.
So,
Makes sense. Thank you.
good. Now we're going to move into some position reallocations for the next school year. We are trying to be good steward of our resources. We are continuously doing a review of our positions based on needs and student enrollment. We also want to make sure that we're serving our students the best that we can. Of our operating budget, 81% goes to salary and benefits, so it is a large portion of our budget. But we also want to be mindful that we do have a human element when we're moving people and not just positions. This is the slide where we're showing some of the reallocations that we are doing, the position as well as the FTE, and then the type of reallocation that we're doing. And Ms. Frakley is here if she wants to add anything additional for this. She said she's good.
Mr. Atkins, any questions so far?
No, sorry, I got you guys on mute. I think you meant to unmute.
Gotcha, no worries. Sounds like jet engines in the background, understood.
All right, so the first three items were for information only. Now we're going to move into the part of our presentation which we will be asking for this information to be forwarded to the full board for approval. So first we want to talk about the additional state funds for FY26. You're familiar with this budget timeline, so we put the red arrow there. Here's where we are. We're May 19th with approval for tomorrow night at your regular school board meeting. Budget adjustments based on the governor coming through with additional state funds for us. And as Dr. Hummer said earlier in the presentation, this $1.66 million is already baked into our appropriation. It was just set aside in the hopes that we would arrive at this decision, and we have. So the governor authorized the state budget on May 2nd, and we're super excited and grateful because it includes $1.66 million more for FCPS through enhancing the state-funded support position ratio. This has been a long time coming. This goes back to 2010. So what essentially this does is provides more state funding for support positions at a level that all school divisions, closer to the level that all school divisions are employing, what it takes to operate school divisions.
And this is essentially recovery from the Great Recession back in 2008.
You got it.
Good.
Yep. So we wanted to put this back in front of you. These were the 40 positions that we originally requested when we were going through the FY26 budget process. So I just want to give you a minute to refresh those positions. And you let me know when you're ready for me to move to the next slide. Ready to move on? Okay. So of those 40 positions, we are recommending that the 22 that you see here, that we add these positions up to the $1.66 million additional state funds that we're receiving. This is a slight change from what we showed you back in our earlier presentations. The earlier version had 5 K-3 teachers and 6 secondary teachers. We just changed those 2 lines a bit, but all the other positions are the same that we shared with you earlier. So we'll certainly entertain any questions that you may have about these positions.
Good.
Good. Yeah, we've been talking about these for a while. So if there are no questions on the 22 positions, we'll move to the last part of the presentation, which is an FTE request, an additional data lab school teacher. If you recall, a couple of months ago, we asked for 2. This would take it up to 3. There are no local funds required here. This is through the partnership with George Mason for the data science lab.
Awesome. I also hear that a visit from Governor Youngkin is on the horizon of this data science lab.
That is correct, Madam Chair. I was going to add that in there. They reached out because they want to come out to all the new lab schools that are opening up. So we reached out. We're looking at some dates. And once we get that to you, or hopefully you all can join us.
Awesome.
Yep, absolutely. Very excited about this program.
Definitely. Yes. Definitely needed. Motion now versus later, is that what is going on? Okay, okay,
We're
got it.
talking through the logistics. So
Okay,
I'm going to go back a couple slides. So on these 22 positions, as you can see here, the superintendent recommends the committee forward to the full board the approval of 22 additional full-time equivalent positions to be funded by additional state dollars for FY26. So how would the committee like to move?
Madam Chair, I'm going to make a motion that we forward along to the full board the approval of 22 additional full-time equivalent positions to be funded by additional state dollars we received for fiscal year 26.
second.
Second. I do have a question,
Okay, yep, go ahead, Mr. Atkins.
All right. So with the additional data science teacher, and that coming in on grant dollars, what happens if the grant runs out? Are we obligated to pay for that with local dollars?
Yeah, Mr. Atkins, great question. And we talked about this when we rolled this program out. So this program dollars will last us, I think we said 3 years. So when we get to year 2 of this program, we will have to decide if we want to fund this program moving forward or if we want to essentially dissipate this program. So we'll have to have that conversation in 2 years' time. Because we'll
Yeah,
have to
I mean-
prepare ahead for that 3rd year. Or unless the state wants to continue to fund it, which is conversations that we're currently having with them about funding these lab school programs.
Okay. It just puts Miss Freakley in kind of a bind. Hire somebody for a position that might get cut in a couple years.
And that's a great point, Mr. Atkins. The way I see this one, and I understand especially who's going to fund it after the funding is gone, that's a big question. I would hate to leave this money on the table right now, which is why I think we need to grab it and take it while it's free money on the table from George Mason at this point. And we know we have a solid 3 years, and it sounds like that there is a plan in place to start evaluating whether how we're going to fund that position, or should we even? I mean, this program may fall flat. I don't think it will, but let's just hypothetically say that students aren't interested and we don't see the need. And of course, that's something that we're not going to fund past the 3-year time frame. But I feel like there's just too many unknowns to just say no to it right now. The one known that we do have is we have 3 years of funding for a position that we currently need in our system.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all. I'm just trying to make that point of, we need to start looking at that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree. So we have a motion on the table. It's been seconded, and we've had some discussion. Any further discussion? Any more discussion? All right. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
And this will be the separate one for Mason, right?
All right, so now we recommend to forward to the full board a request for a data lab school teacher full-time equivalent position.
All right, Madam Chair, I'm going to make a motion to forward to the full board a request for a data lab school teacher full-time equivalent
Second.
position.
All right, motion has been seconded. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes.
That concludes our presentation. So just a quick recap. We provided some information about federal funds, as well as the results of our spring internal audit, position reallocations for 26, and 2 requests to go to the full board. The request for 22 additional full-time equivalent positions through additional state funds, as well as the request for 1 full-time equivalent position for the Data Lab School Partnership.
Fantastic. I just want to foot stomp one more thing on number 2 there, the spring internal audit, back to that. So that was an audit of all of our funds, nearly $1/3 billion worth, and with that only one finding of 45 laptops. I also want to reiterate that audit was commissioned by the county. So that was an external, I would call it an externally requested internal audit, if that makes sense. So they are the ones that request that commissioned, or that what's the wrong word? What's the proper word? Acquired. Well, they acquired the accounting firm and assigned them to come in and to audit us, and we passed with flying colors with that one very small exception. So I see that as a pretty massive win. You don't usually hear that in major corporations that receive an audit of only having that one finding and having it be so minor. So congratulations to your team on that. So on that county funded and required audit. So thank you. All right. Anything else?
I just can't believe that this might be the first time in 6 months we've wrapped up a finance committee.
I know. Well, we may not be wrapping it up. Mr. Atkins, do you have any comments or any questions?
All good.
All good? Okay. All right. Well, it looks like that concludes our agenda. How would the committee like to proceed?
Madam Chair, I move that we adjourn our meeting.
All right. Second?
Second.
All right. And we have a motion. It's been seconded. Any discussion? All right. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 And opposed? Motion passes. We're adjourned.